right, questions? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The Supreme Court, and specifically Justice Gorsuch yesterday, seemed concerned about the Trump administration's usurping congressional authority, calling it a, quote, one-way ratchet that can't be turned back. What's your response to that? Are the justices right to be concerned that Congress isn't fulfilling its constitutional obligations?
I don't find myself in disagreement with Justice Gorsuch too often, but I think he's missed the mark on this one. First of all, I don't think you should read too much into the questioning that you heard at the Supreme Court. I mean, this is part of judicial review. It's a cherished part of that tradition. I used to be one of those litigators. I did constitutional law oral argument, and I would have liked to have argued that case yesterday, because I think the law is clearly on the side of what the administration has done. I'll remind you that I'm a jealous guardian of Article 1. You know, the legislative branch of government in our constitutional system is the most important. It was placed first in prominence. And that's true. And while Congress has a role to play in tariffs and related trade and economic policy, the executive branch does as well. And I think the president has used that well within the bounds of what he's allowed to do, because he's addressing what was truly a crisis for the country. The trade disparity had gone on for decades. It was creating a real imbalance, and it was adversely affecting American people and consumers. Remember that he ran on this idea. He talked about tariffs on the campaign trail, and he got a popular and electoral college mandate in the election. So this is not some surprise. He's fulfilling the promise that he was elected to fulfill in a literal sense. So I think the court has to give deference to that. I think the court has to recognize the executive is doing what they're doing. He's using tariffs to create leverage in our trade strategy, and it is yielding great results for the American people. And heaven forbid if it were reversed, because it would create chaos, which is one of the questions I think Justice Barrett asked, my old friend from Louisiana. I mean, that was an important question, because it would set back all of the strategy and the trade agreements and a lot of the things that have been accomplished for the people. So in summary, I would say, don't read too much into the questions. This is how the process works. I'm sure the court will look at this very carefully and deliberately, as they do, and I expect that we'll have a majority of the court that says that this administration is doing what they have the legal authority to do. If I felt like the executive branch had overstepped its bounds on trade or on the tariffs or something, I would have stepped in. I mean, that's my job as the Speaker of the House over the legislative branch. I would have done it in my own way, to be candid. I would have gone to the president privately and said, hey, sir, enough. I think you're overstepped the bounds. Let's try to figure that out. I wouldn't have publicly had a big spat with him, because it wouldn't have been necessary. But that conversation didn't happen, because I believe that what he's done is well within the bounds. And so we'll see what the court does. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Leader Thune has said on a number of occasions that in exchange for reopening the government, he will promise Democrats a vote on ACA subsidies by a date certain. Will you do the same in the House?
He promised it a long time ago, and he was rebuffed. I mean, that's not what this is about. I mean, they've demonstrated over and over and over. Somebody said this is the Seinfeld shutdown. It's about nothing. If you brought in 100 Senate and House Democrats right now and said, what is it about? They wouldn't even give you the same answer. They don't even know. They filed a counter proposal that's $1.5 trillion in new spending with all the crazy abuses that I listed earlier today. That's still sitting out there. That's the counter proposal. Then they tried to say it was about health care. That was never the issue for the September 30th fiscal cliff. That was always a December issue. We always knew, everybody in the building knew, we were going to have to wrestle through that and come to a consensus on a solution on the COVID-era Obamacare subsidies in October, November, December. And ironically, they're eating up all the clock where that would have been done. It's not about any of this. It's about politics, as we explained earlier. They are more afraid of the radical activists who are running the Democratic Party right now than they are of starving families, having families go hungry and having federal workers go without paychecks. That's just a simple fact. So yes, Leader Thune has been over backwards. He's offered them a vote. You know what they told him in response? No, we need you to guarantee the outcome of that vote. Well, that's ridiculous. That can't be done. No, because we did our job, and I'm not part of the negotiation. The House did its job on September 19th. I'm not promising anybody anything. I'm going to let this process play out. I'll tell you what they wanted. I'll tell you what Schumer and Jeffries wanted. In fact, Chuck Schumer said it publicly and decried that Thune and I would not go in a back room with them and make a four corners agreement on Obamacare subsidies. And I said, there's no way. That it was never possible or appropriate for that to be handled on a CR, on a short-term stopgap funding measure, and he knows that. And we're not doing that anymore. We're not taking four corners, four leaders in a back room and making a deal and hoisting it upon the people. I'm not going to be a part of that. Chuck Schumer is part of the old way this was done, And that's part of the reason why people have such a lack of trust in Congress. We need to be transparent, open, we need to do it through the process, we need to involve and engage all of our caucuses and all of our members in this discussion. Healthcare is very complicated, it is very complex, and it is not something poor people can go in a smoke-filled room in the back and make a deal on. I reject it, yes.
Mr. Speaker, the President yesterday said that Republicans were getting killed for the shutdown. Is it helpful to have them talking like this when it's actually emboldening Democrats not to pay?
Look, I've spoken with the president about it. I reminded him, as I said this morning, this was not a surprise to us. I mean, blue states elected blue leaders. I mean, yeah, so what? I mean, it would have been a huge headline if we could have had an upset there, but that was to be expected. As Leader Scalise said, I mean, you know, if the three big elections yesterday would have been in, you know, Louisiana, Alabama, and Texas, you'd have a totally different narrative, right? Or name any red state. It just so happened that those were the blue states. That was the blue outcomes. That's what everybody expected. I don't read too much into that. Yes, front row. Morning.
Two questions.
One of them is that we've lost is the looking out the window phenomena. And there's some evidence that looking out the window is fundamentally important.
But food prices themselves have still been going up. Grocery prices are still going up. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, but the USDA has reported, and all of the economists have shown, food prices always go up. There's an inflationary level that's built into grocery prices, but they're going up at a much slower pace. In other words, the economic policies, even though all the provisions of the Working Families Tax Cut have not yet been implemented, that's going to make a dramatic effect. It's going to be like jet fuel to the economy. We have all these pro-growth policies that will bring down costs, increase wages, increase jobs, and more access to the economic rung so that more people can climb up the ladder. But in the meantime, even the fact that we have made these positive steps and momentum, grocery prices are rising at their slowest level in many years. You should look into that. So, I mean, that is an exhibit C, and the argument that it's Republican policies that are the only thing that's going to bring that down. The reason that your grocery prices are so high, it's multifaceted, but it's because we had 4 years of Bidenomics. Remember when they tried to tell you that Bidenomics was so good for you and your family, and everybody went, what are you talking about? That's part of the reason we shellacked them in the election last fall, because they were trying to sell you a bill of goods that wasn't true. And the reason that inflation rose is because, as was noted earlier, the big signature pieces of legislation that they passed in the Biden administration were disastrous for the economy. And it made inflation rise rapidly. Why? Because when you pour more dollars into the economy, that is the effect. It's just as sure as gravity, it's basic economics. And the Marxists and the socialists who are taking over the Democratic Party turn a blind eye to the reality of basic economics. And you're going to see the effects of that as well. Yes? No, I do believe that the demographic shift that we were able to see and experience in the 2024 election will hold. I believe that large numbers of those new voters and these demographics that have not traditionally been with the Republican Party are with us. I will point you to the study that the Democrats themselves paid for that came out, a week or so ago, and they had, I think, hundreds of thousands of respondents to these polls. And the Democrats determined in their own analysis that they are regarded as weak, woke, and out of touch with the people, okay? That's why they lost last November, and that's why they're gonna lose this coming November, okay? As Carlos Jimenez said, as a Cuban who came here, his family immigrated here, he came here when he was 7. This is the American dream. I know that the Hispanic and Latino populations across this country understand which party is delivering for them, and they're going to feel that positive effect. They're going to feel increased wages and more opportunity, and before they get to that election next fall. And that's why we did the big, beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, so early in the year, because we wanted that to really take hold after the beginning of the year so that people will feel that. And we're convinced they will, and I think that's going to inure to our benefit. Thank you all so much.